Hello, and welcome to Life Diaries, a space where the pages of life open up, one story at a time. These are tales written by experience, spoken from the heart. Take a moment for yourself, and let's begin. Eleanor loved her only son, David, immensely, seeing him as the main reward of her life. Towards her daughter, Claire, an independent and self-sufficient young woman, she was distant, feeling neither anxiety nor particular warmth. All her care, all her aspirations were focused on David, consuming his life completely. Although David had long since grown up and achieved success, his mother felt that without her constant control, he wouldn't be able to take a single step. This was a profound delusion, but Eleanor refused to listen to reason. All David's attempts to loosen his mother's grip shattered against the wall of her certainty, and in the end, he resigned himself, learning to navigate under constant supervision. The real difficulties began when David decided to get married. Helen was already the third young woman he had introduced to his mother as a potential bride. The previous two couldn't withstand the onslaught of all-consuming care and total control, preferring to break off the relationships. Helen turned out to be surprisingly patient and understanding. David had briefed her in advance on the specifics of his family life and warned her that they would have to live with his mother. The young woman accepted this with surprising calmness, ready for the sake of her beloved to find common ground with his difficult parent. "You don't choose your parents, Dave," she said. "I'll try to get along with your mom." Helen understood perfectly well that Eleanor had given life to the man she loved, and for that alone, she was ready to forgive a lot. However, she couldn't yet imagine how difficult a future mother-in-law's nitpicking could be. The first meeting was scheduled for Saturday, and Helen was terribly nervous. Eleanor didn't yet know about the proposal, and the young woman understood that her and David's future was at stake. Having asked her fiancé in advance about his mother's tastes and preferences, Helen felt prepared, but the anxiety still didn't subside. She baked her future mother-in-law's favorite honey cake, carefully chose her outfit, and waited for David. He arrived with a bouquet of flowers, picked up Helen, and they went to his parents' house. Eleanor was also preparing for the meeting, but her mood was far from welcoming. Even before seeing the young woman, she had decided in advance that she wouldn't like her. Deep down, the mother was certain that no one could ever love and care for her son the way she did. Eleanor met them in the hallway, dressed smartly and with light makeup, looking quite benevolent. But Helen physically felt a wave of negativity emanating from this woman. For the first time in her life, it became so clearly apparent to her that she wasn't welcome here, but she wasn't going to give up prematurely. During dinner, Eleanor asked standard questions about family, education, work, housing. Helen answered calmly and confidently. She truly had something to be proud of. She had grown up in a respectable family and received a good upbringing and education. Helen's father was a colonel, her mother a surgeon, and Helen herself had graduated from medical school and worked as a gastroenterologist in a private clinic. Eleanor was impressed by her story, as the previous contenders for David's hand were much simpler. She liked Helen's background and her profession, and she might have even praised her if she hadn't been vying for a place beside her son. Overall, the dinner passed without incident. David drove Helen home and returned, knowing that a serious conversation with his mother was unavoidable. He found her in the living room and immediately understood from her expression Helen had displeased her in some way. David prepared to defend his choice. "Mom, what's wrong again? How did Helen displease you?" He decided to go on the offensive immediately. Eleanor pretended to be surprised by the directness of the question. "Why did you decide she displeased me?" she asked calmly. Quite a nice young woman, educated, cultured, pleasant to talk to. "But," David began, knowing there would be a but. But there's definitely a but, isn't there? His mother picked up. Yes, if it weren't for one but, I think she's boring. David even laughed at this ridiculous nitpick. Mom, are you serious? She's boring? Why did you decide that? It was clear that Eleanor simply hadn't found another reason for her displeasure. I don't know, it just seemed that way to me, she replied stubbornly. Then, changing the subject, she added, How will you live with her? Have you thought about that? David went up to her, took her hands, and said softly, I'll live perfectly well with her, Mom. Stop looking for a black cat where there isn't one. Helen is a very good young woman, calm, well-raised, cultured, exactly the kind you dreamed of for me, Mom, he urged. Listen, I'm 32. I want a family and children. How much longer should I keep choosing? Eleanor understood that her son was right, but she so didn't want to share him with anyone. Even the thought of future grandchildren didn't warm her heart, because besides her son, she didn't need anyone. You're right, son. It's time for you to get married, she began her usual song. It just seems to me that you're still a little boy who needs his mother and her care more than anything in the world. But you've already grown up, and a mother is no longer needed. Mom, don't say silly things. I always need you, and will live with you. I'm not going anywhere, David assured her. We'll also spend time together, have dinner together, go shopping, go to the dacha. It's just that one more person will be living in our house, and in time, maybe more than one. He looked at his mother with hope, and Eleanor couldn't bear that look. She had never been able to refuse her favorite. All right, get married. I won't interfere, she finally gave in. Mom, I knew you were the wisest woman in the world, David exclaimed, hugging and kissing her. 2 months later, David and Helen got married, and the young woman moved into her husband's house. The first few weeks passed surprisingly smoothly. Helen couldn't even believe her luck, as Eleanor was benevolent, chatted pleasantly, and helped in every way. But as soon as David left for a week-long business trip, everything changed. The nitpicking poured down like from a horn of plenty. You're not ironing David's shirts correctly. You didn't put enough salt in the soup. You put too much salt in the porridge. You put the cups in the wrong place. It reached absurdity. You can't sit in this armchair. This is David's armchair. All members of our family know that. Helen didn't understand how a person could change so drastically in just one night. She silently endured, re-ironed shirts, rearranged cups, and corrected all her mistakes. The real nightmare began when Helen brought a kitten home. David had said that they always had cats, and Helen naively thought that the fluffy little one would soften the atmosphere. She cleared the acquisition with David, and her husband approved the idea. But Eleanor reacted differently. Why did you bring this flea-ridden thing into the house? Do you know that I can't stand cat hair? You're doing this to spite me. And that's when Helen's patience snapped. Dear Eleanor, what are you trying to achieve? For Dave and me to get a divorce? She asked calmly but firmly. That won't happen. We love each other. I cleared the acquisition of the kitten with your son, and he assured me that you always had cats and that you would surely like this idea. But it turns out you're ready to contradict even that just because I brought the kitten, Helen continued. The only thing you'll achieve with this attitude towards me is that we'll move into a rented apartment, and you'll be left alone. Does that option suit you? I don't think so. So either we live peacefully with you, or we leave. She laid down the condition. You can't count on us breaking up. I'm expecting a child. Eleanor looked at her daughter-in-law with completely different eyes. So, you do have a character, girl. Want to go to war with me? Well, ran through her mind. Aloud, however, she said something completely different. I don't want you to move somewhere else. Maybe I am indeed slightly nitpicking you, But you must understand me. I'm a mother. I want my son's happiness. Helen replied, And you think I appeared in his life to ruin it? Did I give you any reason to think so badly of me? No. Eleanor turned to leave but immediately turned back. All right, let's live peacefully, she said, adding with a hint. Especially since you shouldn't be getting upset. After this conversation, Eleanor's behavior truly changed. She stopped picking on Helen about everything, tried to spend more time in her room, and crossed paths with her daughter-in-law less often. Helen noticed that the kitten, whom she had named Jasper, often peeked into her mother-in-law's room, and she picked him up even more often than Helen herself did. Life in the house gradually improved. 2 years passed. Helen and David had a baby son, whom they named Edward, after David's father. David's father had been a policeman and died in the line of duty, and Eleanor always remembered him fondly. David barely remembered his father. He was only 4 years old when he died. Eddie was growing up, and his grandmother often played with him and took him for walks while Helen was busy with household chores. Eleanor's attitude towards her daughter-in-law hadn't changed. She still disliked her, but now she did so silently. David worked a lot and often went on business trips. Their life flowed calmly and measuredly. But, as often happens, unforeseen circumstances burst into their quiet family haven. David had to leave for a month for another country, and Helen really didn't want to let him go. But there was no choice. A couple of days after he left, Helen noticed that Eleanor was behaving strangely. She was silent, didn't play with her grandson, seemed withdrawn. Gathering her courage, Helen decided to have a conversation. Eleanor, is something bothering you? She asked uncertainly. Maybe something hurts? Tell me. I'm a doctor. Nothing hurts. Everything is fine, her mother-in-law replied calmly, but Helen didn't believe her. She decided to observe her behavior, and it wasn't in vain. The next day, Helen accidentally overheard Eleanor talking to someone on the phone and asking for help. Helen didn't understand exactly what was being discussed, but she clearly heard the words, "I need your support." Eleanor had many acquaintances and relatives, but she could only ask the closest ones for help. Helen called David, feeling growing anxiety. "Dave, you need to talk to Mom urgently," she said. "Something is happening with her, and she's not telling me anything. I heard her asking for help on the phone. Talk to her. Maybe something's wrong with her health? I can help." David promised to talk to his mother that same day. "And generally, how are things with you?" he asked. "Oh, it's okay," Helen replied. "It's just that your mom isn't herself. It's making me anxious." David understood her concern and said he would call back in the evening after talking to his mother. In the evening, David reported that his mother's test results were bad. The doctor at the clinic insisted on urgent surgery, but Mom was afraid. "Helena, try talking to her again," David asked. "I asked Mom to show you the tests. She seemed to agree. Show care and attention, you know her. For my sake, of course." "Dave, I'm worried about her myself," Helen replied. "I'll do everything I can." She resolutely entered her mother-in-law's room. "Eleanor, I understand that you dislike me and consider me a bad daughter-in-law, but please allow me to help you anyway." And then something happened that Helen hadn't expected at all. Eleanor wept bitterly. Helen even got scared. "Eleanor, what's wrong? Is it that bad? Is it cancer?" she asked, trying to understand the reason for the tears. "No," her mother-in-law replied through tears. "It's just that I turned to my daughter. She doesn't have time to go to hospitals with me. But that's understandable. I always focused only on David. She has reason to resent me. My sister is also completely caught up in her own affairs and problems. My best friend is at the Dasha. She won't come to the city for my sake. She says, 'You have children. She continued her confession. And it turns out no one cares about me. And I'm afraid, you understand? Very afraid. Helen said softly. All right, let's calm down. You'll tell me everything in detail. Eleanor showed the test results, explaining that the doctor had insisted on immediate surgery, claiming that time had been lost. Helen carefully studied the papers and then looked at her mother-in-law in surprise. Which clinic were you at? Our local one? She asked. I don't see anything terrible, let alone irreversible, in your test results, Helen stated confidently. I'll call my gynecologist now, and we'll go for a consultation tomorrow. I'm sure this is some kind of mistake. Really? Her mother-in-law asked with hope in her eyes. Really, Helen confirmed. The next day, they went to the medical center where Helen worked, to her acquaintance, a gynecologist. The doctor listened to the complaints, looked at the test results, and was extremely surprised by the local doctor's recommendation for surgery. Eleanor, I assure you, you have no indications for surgery, he said. I'll prescribe you treatment, you'll undergo it, and everything will be fine, he reassured her. Eleanor wept again, but this time from relief. Helen, can you drop in on that specialist yourself? The gynecologist asked Helen. Let her explain why she scared your mother-in-law. You can't scare people like that. Don't worry, Andrew. I'll sort it out, Helen replied. When they left the center, Eleanor stopped, took Helen's hand, and said, Helena, please forgive me. She wept again. I was very unhappy. I picked on you for no reason at all. I'm guilty before you. And you. And you turned out to be the only person who came to my aid. After all, if I had gone to the doctor with someone else, they would have sent me for surgery. No one would have looked into it, she realized. Thank you, my girl. Thank you so much. I promise you, I will be the most loving mother-in-law in the world. Helen also wept, not expecting such words and confessions. It's all right, Eleanor, she replied, hugging her mother-in-law. We are one family and should help and support each other. Eleanor shook her head. In life, it's often the other way around. Strangers support and help, while your own have no time. Well, then we are the exception to the rule, Helen smiled. Let's go home. Eddie is waiting for us there with my mom. Suddenly, Eleanor stopped abruptly and looked at her daughter-in-law. Now listen to me, just don't interrupt, she said. I want to thank you, so that you see not just in words, but in deeds that I have changed, her mother-in-law said firmly. I will sign over my share of the apartment to you, so that you and David are always on equal footing. That will be fair. Helen tried to object. But... Now don't argue with me, her mother-in-law interrupted playfully but strictly. On this matter, I will be categorical, strict, as a mother-in-law should be. She smiled and hugged her daughter-in-law tightly.